We have Oluwatomi Mayowa, senior analyst with Financial Derivatives, who's been standing by. Toby, good morning. I wonder how many 200 Naira, old 200 Naira you have at home. It will become very useful at this time.
Well, I must say I don't have any right now because, we've been expecting something like this. First of all, good morning, Amy. Good to have you. So actually, at the moment, I don't have any old notes. At the moment, you just have to stay by and not allow this kind of thing to just.
You didn't want to be caught up. You didn't know which way it was going.
I just had to just.
Yes, yeah, and that's part of the uncertainty with which a lot of people are talking about in the business community.
So basically, the implication is still there. Although it will help to ease the tension, but the question is by how much. And if I would just give an estimate, let me just start by saying that let's say when the CBN introduced the policy, the Naira redesign, about 3.2 trillion was in circulation, and 3 of the 8 denominations constitute about 90% of the total cash in circulation, which is about 2.9 trillion. And let's say because we were told that 1.9 trillion was taken out, so what is left is about 1 trillion, right? So now that the president has announced that 200 Naira can still be is still going to be a legal tender till April. So we'll have about, let's say, roughly 300 billion of that 200 Naira notes in circulation. So adding that 300, because the remaining one is no more legal tender, which is the 500 and the 1,000. Adding that 300 billion, and then the 300 billion from the smaller denominations, which is 100 Naira, 50 Naira, and then the approximately 400 new Naira notes that have been printed, we have about a sum of roughly 1 trillion Naira in circulation compared to 3.2 trillion that was in circulation before. So that's about a shortfall of 2.2 trillion. And, looking at that has serious implications. Before the 200 Naira notes was, announced to continue to be legal tender, we have about a shortfall of about 2.5 trillion, but now it's about 2.2 trillion. So it's not, how will I put it, it's not so significant, right? So it's just going to ease the tension a little bit, but it has serious implications for the informal sector and then for the retail sector, which contributes about 30% and 15% respectively to GDP. So we're going to see a decline in transaction because the cash usually those sectors I mentioned earlier are largely driven by cash. So, and we're going to see a decline in transactions. And as a result of that, we can also see, because the argument would be that, okay, people shift to online payments. But don't forget that there will be pressure because, there's people are going to start relying on, that platform, and then there'll be pressure, and then we're going to see an increased number of failed transactions. So all of this results in a decline in the velocity of circulation, which means, the number of times money changes and to settle a particular transaction or to produce outputs. So it's just going to lead to a decline in economic activities, the business activities. And then the manufacturer, because of the decline in demand, will have to reduce the rates at which it produces. So it has significant impact, and I hope we don't see a contraction in Q1 and Q2.
Well, talking about contraction, yesterday we had our inflation, and I mean it was even higher than the projection that FDC had, 21.82. Unfortunately for Nigeria, we had Ghana tapering, we have Egypt tapering, we have South Africa yesterday.
Yes, it's defying global trend actually, because in fact Ghana that has always recorded an increase in its inflation rate. For the first time we saw a decline to about 53%. But and we saw South Africa, we saw the US, the UK, about over 60% of the global economy are at the moment they are recording a decline in inflation. But we are seeing Nigeria's decline. That brings us to the fact that the decline we saw in December was not a trend, right? So because now we are seeing, and it's also defying the normal trend, because normally January we see a decline in inflation as a result of reduced activities and all of that. But why are we seeing this actually? It's just because of the increase in transportation costs as a result of the fuel scarcity that it's harder in January, right? So we are seeing all of that play into price increase, and then the multiple pricing for especially increase in domestic prices for food that necessities. Food that people cannot do without, which is rice, beans, and all of that. So we saw that increase in many states in Nigeria. So that has been the major stoking factor for inflation.
So this is for January. Now it's February that we have. In February that we have. In February, from the beginning of the month, I think the queues at the filling station are easing a bit now.
Yes.
Even though they are still there. But I think we had the worst of the queues in February. Then of course we have this Naira scarcity. We had the POS charges and all of that. So do you think that the lack of cash, which of course has led to reduction in some economic activities, especially in the informal sector, do you think it will reduce inflation in February?
Yeah, theoretically it should reduce inflation because definitely an increase in a decrease in output will lead to a decline in price level. But it's also a question of how the commodities, the necessity of that commodity. Do you understand? I don't even get my point. So there will be, once that commodity is very necessary, you cannot do it. You just have to buy them at that moment. So you have to pay for it, and then we see people putting extra charges on that payment, because if they have to take it to the bank, if they have to take, probably if they are buying with old notes, if you want to buy with old notes, which is not even a legal tender again, and then you don't have a choice or something, you have to pay more to be able to, so that they can just be able to take the money to the CBN or something. And then because it's hard to get cash now, if you are going to do transfer, you just have to pay extra money in order to get that. So people are going to price in those things into their goods, especially for necessities. So that can lead to increase in prices in the short term anyways. And then the increase in transportation costs too. But I'm talking about goods that that the demand will still remain irrespective of what happens.
But election is next weekend, so we're getting close to the mark, and hopefully after the presidential election and the national ones, we'll have a little bit of ease. Do you see things maybe stabilizing and giving us a little bit of normalcy even before the 11th of March election?
Well, it's reality. That's what I'm going to say. People are going to be faced with reality, because even though our minds, there can be ease in tension, should I say in the mind, sort of, because if there's no cash, the tension still continues. If you cannot withdraw from the ATM, if you cannot, the queues at the ATM is still long, and then there are no access to, or probably there's a delay in transaction being settled. So all of that will still cause that tension in the air, even though, yes, we know that, okay, things are going to get better in the second half of because that's when the handing over is going to be. So, but because the cash will still be scarce, all of those things will still play in, and then cost of transportation will still be high. So all of that would, to some extent, still keep pressures elevated at the moment. So it's a matter of reality, but it's going to give us a better hope. At least we know that we're suffering now, and we don't suffer next.
Okay, let's hope so. Let's hope that we are paying for an easier tomorrow. But take us through what's going on in the commodity space. How's it looking there?
So for oil price, investors are actually, they're maintaining a positive sentiment. Why? Because of the China reopening of its economy, which is going to be a long-term view for the oil price. So we're going to see investors, we're going to see a positive sentiment in the market, in the oil market. Although we'll see that the war in Ukraine, the Russia-Ukraine war might not, have so much impact as it had last year, because we could see the US coming in to, intervene in the market by increasing supply and all of that. So that would help to keep a flow. That would help to keep a check on oil price. And so we're not going to see that. We might not see that increase to about $100 per barrel. In the long term, except if there's another serious problem. So then for gas, for oil, for gas, natural gas, winter is over, and then it's for the predictions that the UK is going to go into recession as a result of the increase in Russia's weaponization of gas to the EU has subsided. Why? Because the European countries are now getting their gas from alternative sources, and then the winter is over already. So we might not see gas price increase so much as it did last year in the long term. So that's what we're going to see.
All right, Oluwatomi Maiwa, thank you so much, Senior Analyst with Financial Derivatives Company, for your time this morning.
Thank you very much, Ian.